My 28th birthday was supposed to be quiet, peaceful, uneventful. The kind of birthday where you tell yourself you're finally too old for drama, even though deep down, you know your family will always find a way to deliver it straight to your doorstep, wrapped in toxicity and tied with a ribbon of humiliation, especially when my sister, Melissa, is involved. She has always been the type who needs a spotlight like other people need oxygen, and when she doesn't have it, she manufactures chaos to place herself at the center of attention. I grew up in that shadow, surviving her tantrums, her cruelty, and her desperate need to paint herself as the golden daughter, while I played the unwanted understudy. But nothing, and I mean nothing, compared to what she did on the night of my birthday, when my family gathered at my apartment under the quiet promise of no drama. I should have known that meant the opposite. Everything was fine at first. Mom brought flowers, Dad sat in the corner scrolling on his phone, and my younger cousins ran around excitedly waiting for cake. I had baked the cake myself, a simple chocolate one, mostly because Melissa insisted on bringing nothing, like always, claiming she was too busy and emotionally exhausted and already doing enough by being there. I thought if I ignored her attitude, the night would stay peaceful. That was my first mistake. When the time came to cut the cake, everyone gathered around the table, phones out, candles lit. I made a wish, something small, something gentle, to finally have 1 year where my sister didn't try to ruin everything. I blew out the candles and everyone clapped. But Melissa stepped forward, smiling that smile, the one that always meant trouble, held the cake knife in one hand, and in the sweetest voice said, "Wait, I have a surprise for the birthday girl." She lifted the cake from the table as if to hand it to me, but without hesitation, she shoved the entire thing straight into my face with such force I stumbled back into the wall. Chocolate, frosting, and crushed candles smeared across my eyes and nose, but what stunned me more was the sound of her laughter. Not normal laughter, cruel, loud, delighted. She clapped like she was watching a comedy show, shouting to everyone, "Come on, don't look so serious, it's a joke, she knows how to take a joke." But I couldn't breathe. Cake filled my nose, my left eye burned, and the shock of hitting the wall sent a jolt through my skull. Everyone froze. No one moved, not even Mom. They just stared awkwardly as Melissa kept laughing, recording the whole thing on her phone like it was the funniest moment of her life. When I finally regained my balance, I wiped the frosting from my eyelids and touched the back of my head, and my fingers came back red. Blood. My blood. I said quietly, "I think I need to sit down," but Melissa rolled her eyes. "Oh, please, stop being dramatic. It was just cake, not a bullet." She tossed her hair and walked past me like she owned the room. My head throbbed, a deep pressure blooming behind my eyes, the kind you can feel in your teeth. But when I tried to speak again, the room wobbled. The last thing I wanted was to give Melissa the satisfaction of seeing me fall apart, so I excused myself to the bathroom, rinsed cake out of my hair, and wrapped a towel around the back of my head. A small cut, nothing huge, but my vision was blurry, too blurry. And that's when I felt the dizziness intensify. Something was wrong. Very wrong. I stepped out and announced I needed to go to the ER because the impact didn't feel right. Melissa barked out a laugh. "You're going to the hospital because of cake? Wow, you really were born fragile." Mom muttered half-heartedly, "Maybe you're overreacting," and Dad didn't even look up from his phone. I drove myself because no one bothered to offer. The world tilted on the highway and I gripped the steering wheel with both shaking hands, praying I wouldn't pass out. When I arrived at the ER, I explained what happened, feeling embarrassed even saying it out loud. My sister smashed a cake into my face and I hit my head against the wall. The nurse looked concerned, not amused. She rushed me for a CT scan because my pupils weren't reacting evenly. 30 minutes later, the doctor walked into the room with the x-rays in his hands and a look that made my stomach drop. "You're very lucky you came in. It's not a surface injury. You have a hairline fracture in your skull and mild internal bleeding. If you had gone to sleep tonight, you might not have woken up." My throat closed. My chest tightened. I whispered, "What?" The doctor didn't soften his tone. Whoever pushed you or caused this injury did so with significant force. This wasn't an accident." And then, in a voice firm enough to make my heart stop, he said the words that changed everything. "I'm obligated to call 911. This is classified as assault." My world spun, not from the injury, but from the truth. Melissa hadn't just ruined my birthday, she had nearly killed me. The paramedics arrived to take a statement, but the doctor stepped in first, saying, "Given the nature of the injury and your sister's recorded behavior, this is a criminal matter." Recorded. That word hit me. Melissa's video, the one she proudly filmed to humiliate me, was now evidence. The police asked questions, took photos, asked for my sister's name, my family's contact information, and the details of every person in the room. By the time they were done, I knew this wasn't going to be something Melissa could laugh off or gaslight or twist into another performance. This time, she would face consequences. But I had no idea just how far those consequences would reach, or how the truth behind her jokes would unravel into something darker, something years in the making, something that would change everything I thought I knew about my family, our childhood, and the sister who had always hated me more than she loved attention. And this was only the beginning. As the ER doors slammed shut behind my sister, I sat there on the exam table trembling, my face still sticky with frosting crusting along the cuts, my head pounding from the impact of the table edge, and my throat tightening with something far heavier than pain: betrayal, humiliation, and the horrific realization that she had almost killed me and thought it was funny. The doctor, Dr. Reeves, reappeared holding a large manila envelope containing my x-rays and CT scans, and when he quietly closed the curtain behind him, I braced myself, because nothing in his expression said routine exam. His face had that controlled calm doctors use when the truth is bad enough to require caution, and he sat on the small stool in front of me, lowering his voice as he said, "I already called 911 for you, but not for an ambulance. I called for a detective." And for a second, the room spun because I didn't understand why a detective would be involved until he placed the x-ray against the light panel and pointed at a thin, dark line on the scan. "This isn't a fresh injury," he explained. "This is a healing fracture, meaning you've been hurt like this before, and not by accident. Someone has hit you hard enough multiple times to cause repeated trauma." And suddenly, everything I had been pushing away for years, the jokes, the accidents, the shoves, the slaps disguised as playful, the hair pulling she called sibling roughhousing, all the moments my sister had leaned close to my ear and whispered, "No one will believe you," all of it slammed into me at once. Because he was right. She had been hurting me for years, and I had been too conditioned, too afraid, too brainwashed to see it as anything other than normal. But the doctor wasn't done. He said the way she smashed the cake into my face was suspicious because a cake alone couldn't cause the kind of force that left patterns on my jawbone, meaning she had used something else. Maybe her palm, maybe her elbow, maybe the wall, something with impact. And I broke down right there, my sobs ripping out of me so violently it felt like I was finally exhaling years of silence, years of swallowing every bruise and every insult, because my parents always said, "She's just emotional. Don't provoke her. She's the older one. Respect her." And all the while, she grew bolder, crueler, more entitled. And now it had almost cost me my life. The officer arrived, Detective Molina, small but sharp-eyed, the kind of woman who looked like she could see lies forming before they even left someone's mouth. And she asked me questions gently, not pushing, not judging, just guiding me through the buried pain like she knew exactly how victims learn to downplay their suffering. As I explained what happened that night, I saw her expression darken. But when I admitted that my sister had a history of this, that she'd once locked me outside in freezing weather as a lesson, once shoved my head underwater in the pool because she wanted to see how long I'd fight, once thrown a plate at my face during dinner because I looked ungrateful, she stopped writing and looked up slowly, as if she needed to confirm that yes, she had heard correctly. She asked if my parents knew, and I said yes, but they always dismissed it, always told me to keep the peace, always told me don't ruin the family dynamic. And for the first time in my life, I heard how insane it sounded out loud, how deeply wrong, how my own parents had let their daughter become a danger to me because acknowledging it would mean acknowledging their own failure. But Melina didn't let me spiral. She said what happened to me was called abuse, and I deserve protection. And I almost collapsed with relief. Meanwhile, my sister was still at home, thinking she had gotten away with it, probably laughing, probably texting her friends about how dramatic I was, how I'd gone to the hospital for cake. But she had no idea the ER doctor had triggered a mandatory domestic assault report, or that the detective had already requested hospital security footage, which clearly showed me staggering in, covered in icing and blood, clutching my head, barely able to stand. She didn't know that Dr. Reeves had taken detailed photos documenting every bruise, every indentation, every swelling pattern consistent with direct assault. She didn't know that trauma imaging doesn't lie. She didn't know the detective had already contacted my parents, and that their response had been exactly what I expected. This is a misunderstanding. Our girl's roughhouse. Don't overreact. We'll handle it as a family. But what they didn't know was that the detective had already heard those same lines from hundreds of families who protected the abuser instead of the victim, and their dismissiveness only made them look complicit. When I was finally discharged with pain medication and instructions for neurological monitoring, Detective Melina offered to drive me home herself because she said, "You're not safe with them tonight." And she was right, I wasn't. I wasn't safe with people who saw my pain as an inconvenience. The next morning, everything exploded. Police cars pulled up to my parents' house, neighbors staring from windows, and my sister, my confident, smug, untouchable sister, came out in handcuffs, screaming that I was ruining her life, that I was lying for attention, that I was jealous, and her voice cracked with a panic I had never once heard in all the years she held power over me. For once, she was afraid. The investigation snowballed. Old injuries matched old medical visits I had brushed off. A pattern of trauma emerged. Texts surfaced where she threatened me, joked about hurting me, bragged about teaching me lessons. And then the security footage from the party hall arrived. She hadn't slipped. She hadn't lost grip of the cake. She had grabbed my head with both hands and slammed it downward, deliberately, violently, with the kind of force meant to harm. And when the footage hit the DA's office, they added felony assault charges. My parents tried to pressure me to drop everything, to forgive and move on, to not destroy your sister's future. But when I refused, their masks cracked. My mother told me I was dramatic, like always. My father said I was weaponizing victimhood. And in that moment, something broke, not inside me, but between us, finally shattering the illusion of family I had been forced to cling to my entire life. Court proceedings began weeks later, and my sister avoided making eye contact with me every single time we were in the same room. Her arrogance gone, her confidence evaporated, replaced with the dawning understanding that abuse has consequences. The doctor testified, calm and factual. The detective presented the footage. The DA laid out the timeline. And when it was my turn to speak, I said everything I had swallowed for years. Not with rage, not with revenge, but with clarity. With the strength that comes from finally knowing your pain is real and your story matters. The courtroom was silent when I finished. Even my parents staring at me like they were seeing me for the first time, not as the quiet, compliant daughter they had sculpted into a shield for their golden child, but as a woman who had survived them. Sentencing day came like a storm cloud that had been gathering for decades, and when the judge read the verdict, guilty, the air seemed to shift, like the universe finally exhaled. My sister was ordered into custody, mandated anger management counseling, a restraining order, and restitution fees. My parents stormed out of the courtroom in disgust, not at her, but at me, as if I had betrayed them by refusing to die quietly under their favorite child's hands. But here's the thing. Survival is not betrayal. Saving yourself is not cruelty. Speaking the truth is not revenge. It's freedom. Months later, in my small apartment, filled with silence instead of fear, I received a letter.
Not from my sister, but from the doctor, Dr. Reeves. Inside was a simple line: "You deserve someone to defend you." I'm glad I could be the first, but not the last. And for the first time in years, I let myself believe that maybe, just maybe, I had a future not shaped by fear. I baked myself a small cake on my next birthday, lit a candle, and this time when I blew it out, no one shoved my face into it. No one mocked me. No one hurt me. I tasted sweetness without pain for the first time in my life. And in that moment, I realized something powerful. She didn't just smash a cake. She smashed the last chain I had left to that family. And in doing so, she accidentally set me free.